everyone. On this episode of Getting Real with The Realtor, me, I'm here with Svetla. Svetla, thank you so much for joining us. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi everyone. So a little bit about me. I live here in the Bay Area. Right now we're in Sunnyvale, where I plan to move pretty soon. I am 30 years old, which makes me officially a millennial.
You're a millennial, and she loves avocado toast.
I do love avocado toast, or avocados mainly. I don't care so much about the toast part. Right now, going into my 30s, I've been considering, do I keep renting and wasting away money at rent every year? Or do I buy a property?
That's a great question. And, I have a tip for you guys. There is a rent versus buy calculator that I will link to in this video. And it will really help you put things into perspective. So tell us a little bit about your journey and what that's been like for you.
Well, typically it's kind of considered as truth that it's typically better to buy than to rent, and it's true in most cases, but I would say there's factors at play that people typically don't consider.
Right. There's a lot of hidden cost in purchasing a home. There is closing cost that you pay when you buy and when you sell. So there's selling costs that are involved. There's insurance. There is interest rate, and interest rate is a huge one because you think you're paying your mortgage, but you're only paying a certain % of your principal of the loan, and then the other rest is interest. So that's also in a way throwing money down the drain, which is the ideology behind not renting, right? Because you think you're throwing money down the drain.
Well, and for me, for instance, last year it didn't really make so much sense to buy because interest rates were really high. They were close to 5%. And although you can always refinance, at that moment in time it didn't make that much sense. And also I could only afford a 10% down on a loan, which makes the bigger portion of my loan covered by interest, so we'll pay more interest over time. Now this year things are looking a little bit different.
The interest dropped. And you were able to save more money, so that's a bigger down payment.
Yeah, and I also invested some of that leftover income between paying rent and the rest of my income. I invested some of it in the stock market and got some returns from that, so that also created a lot more assets.
Great, good job. Yeah, the market was doing really, really well these past couple of years. Real estate overall here in the Bay Area has been pretty stable. It's trending upwards. But still, it's a high entry barrier for first-time home buyers, for millennials like us. I have a lot of millennial friends that have moved outside of San Francisco because it was really expensive to buy in San Francisco. But anyway, let's go back to the topic about rent versus buy. So can you share us a little bit more about maybe like what the numbers was like for you and what kind of numbers you were looking at? So how much were you paying a month in rent?
So I was paying about $2,900, $3,000 a month in rent.
Okay.
In Mountain View, and my unit was rent control.
What's rent control?
Yes. So that limits the amount of rental increases I could have per year, which makes it a lot more predictable.
Okay. And the properties that you were looking at in the price range of $800,000 to $900,000, what would have been your mortgage payment each month?
So the mortgage payment, depending on down payment, would have ranged between, let's say, $4,500 and $5,000 a month.
Okay.
And punching in my numbers in the rent versus buy calculator, it turns out that with the current interest rates, which are relatively low right now, about 3.7, I would be better off buying if I kept the home for 18 years.
If you kept the home for 18 years, then it would be better to buy than to rent at your current rent and at the current mortgage estimate that you're getting.
Right.
Okay.
Now, if you increase the down payment, that number becomes significantly better. So even if you increase the down payment to 20% versus 15%,
right,
that becomes significantly better. So that's one thing that kind of tips the scale over to the buy side. I'm renting a one-bedroom home, and even though it's rent controlled, I have to stay at a one-bedroom home. Versus buying would be potentially a 3-bedroom house, 2 to 3-bedroom house. So very, very different math, and it's something to keep in mind there is that It's not apples to apples. Circumstances change, you know. I might have kids or things like that where I would want to move, and that would significantly increase my rent versus if I buy, then I would know how much I'm paying.
Right. Well, and you're totally right about it being circumstantial, because, you know, right now you don't have any children and you don't have any pets, but say if you wanted to have, you know, a larger home to accommodate your growing family, you know, living in an apartment, there's a lot of restrictions, and as a homeowner, there is a lot of pride in knowing that you're not going to get evicted, in having the ability to, you know, remodel and decorate your house to your personalities and your hobbies. And, you know, there is something about the security of knowing what your mortgage is going to be every single month. Whereas with rent, you know, your rent can increase, and if you don't have rent control, you don't know how much your landlord is going to raise, you know, every year, every, you know, other month. And I've heard horror stories from, you know, our friend who, you know, they've been living in a single-family home in San Francisco. It's not rent control, and the landlord kept raising the rent every couple of months until they were priced out of San Francisco. So, you know, there's a lot to think about when it comes to, you know, should we rent or should we buy? And, you know, use this tool, plug in your numbers. Thank you so much for sharing your numbers and for sharing your presence with us today on this episode. I hope you guys got a lot of value out of that. And please leave a message or contact me if you have any questions.